It was one of Ghana's most controversial tax policies, a levy that sparked protest, divided Parliament, and forced many to rethink how they use mobile money. But now the E-Levy is no more. Parliament has finally abolished the electronic transaction tax, ending 2 years of fierce debate. It's now awaiting the president's signature to come into effect. Emmanuel Jivenu takes us through the rise and fall of the E-Levy.
It all began in November 2021 when the then Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announced the electronic transfer levy as part of the 2022 budget.
Parliament, a 1.75% levy. As the Minister has mentioned, this is not the most egregious tax that you could get, but it really leads to the issue of inclusion of all of us to build our society and wherever we really want to go to transform this land.
But almost immediately, the bill was met with fierce opposition.
Banks are affected, telecoms are affected, merchants are affected, consumers of telecom services are affected because their wallets will be taxed. So fundamentally, Mr. Speaker, where we stand, we vote against it.
Thank you.
In February 2022, thousands of Ghanaians took to the street to reject the levy.
So that is why we are out on the street, to deny the government the opportunity to officialize pickpocketing. Anything I want.
Then came one of Ghana's most chaotic nights in Parliament when MPs fiscally fought over the bill. Despite the resistance, the then MPP majority side passed the bill in March 2022, while the NDC staged a walkout.
This side, we don't support E-Levy. We will not support E-Levy. Count us out of it. They can proceed with whatever business they want to do. I thank you.
As soon as the E-Levy took effect in May 2022, its impact was immediate and severe. Mobile money transactions dropped by over 3 billion cedis in just a few months.
The first quarter of 2022, we've been able to do only 12.9 billion cedis currently. Obviously, we are not getting anything from E-Levy in the first quarter because it wasn't applicable here. E-Levy has been revised to 4.5%.
Even the government admitted it had overestimated how much the levy would generate. The NDC took the fight to the Supreme Court, arguing that the bill was passed unconstitutionally.
We intend to file to question the legitimacy of the decision of less than one half of members of Parliament taking a decision to approve E-Levy as second reading following our walkout.
However, the Supreme Court refused to block the levy, allowing it to continue. With revenue projections failing, the government reduced the tax rate from 1.5% to 1% in January 2023. But for many Ghanaians, the damage was already done. Traders were using cash instead of mobile money.
1.75 body rate now.
I'm hoping the percentage will be reduced to 1.0%. The E-Levy would affect our business as mobile money vendors. People will be forced not to transact with us, and that will make us unemployed.
I remember a man for move from electronics and the old system cash and carry.
The E-Levy won't help. Those at Parliament fighting for its introduction know what they would gain from it. They are only going to dupe us.
Fast forward to March 2025, Parliament has finally repealed the E-Levy.
We will abolish the electronic transfer levy, E-Levy of 1%.
Across the country, the news was met with celebrations.
So Ghana, I think the government is being truthful because before they came to power, they promised all Ghanaians that this is what they are coming to do if they are voted into power, and they have really done that.
I feel so excited. Because you can imagine if you want to send someone 1,000 Ghana cedis, you can imagine the amount of E-Levy they will take. So it is an excited news.
From mass protests to a controversial passage, economic shocks and legal battles, the E-Levy experiment has ended. But as Ghana moves forward, the big question remains: how will government fill the revenue gaps? Emmanuel Jivenu, JoyNews.
A legitimate question there, but the repeal, along with the removal of the betting tax and emission levy, fulfills a key NDC campaign promise and its 120-day social contract. The tax cuts embedded in the 2025 budget presented by the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasi Alatuforsin, signals a major shift in economic policy, with President John Dramani Mahama expected to sign them into law. Ghana's fiscal landscape is set for a transformation. Here's how Parliament's historic vote unfolded.
Parliament has swung the legislative axe, slashing 3 major taxes in a move that reshapes Ghana's fiscal landscape. The House voted to repeal the E-Levy, betting tax and emissions levy, fulfilling a key pledge of the NDC's 2024 campaign. With John Mahama expected to sign them into law, this signals a seismic shift in economic policy. First, on the chopping block, a controversial E-Levy, a tax that sparked national debate and fights in Parliament. But after 2 years, the controversial tax is now on its way out.
The reason for repeal is to ensure that there is availability of additional disposable income to households and to reduce the tax burden on individuals. Mr. Speaker, if this is a reason why we are repealing the E-Levy, then E-Levy is 1%. Why don't we go and repeal VAT?
But if we pass this bill, the deduction will no longer take place and government will lose close to 2 billion Ghana cedis. But the 2 billion Ghana cedis that government is going to lose will now come to Ghanaians. So in effect, individual Ghanaians who ordinarily would have lost 2 billion Ghana cedis will now retain their 2 billion Ghana cedis.
Honourable members, the motion is adopted. The Electronic Transfer Levy Repeal Bill 2025 is now read the 3rd time. Yes, Majority Leader.
Then next, the emissions levy, the controversial charge on vehicle owners and industry.
Repeal of the emissions bill is that the committee observed that the government enacted the Emissions Levy Act 2023, Act 1112, to impose the emissions levy on carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. Mr. Speaker, the members of the committee were unanimous in recommending to this House to repeal this levy.
And finally, the betting tax, which triggered heated exchanges in Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, what we have done is that we have not only exempted or removed the tax on betting, but we have also removed the tax on gaming and also on lotteries, the everyday lotto. So, Mr. Speaker, it's 3 in 1 and should not be construed that this tax is only removing taxes on betting. We've gone more than betting.
The minority leader wasted no time in making his position known.
What they are attempting to do is not new to this House. In 2017, when the Akufo-Addo government presented its first budget, there were a lot of taxes that were repealed. So if today they are here with some fewer amendments to our tax laws, well, we would want to encourage them to do more. We are aware that in their time, Kayaye was even taxed. We are aware.
Well, the next stop is now the desk of President John Mahama, who will now have to sign the bills into law before they take effect. Reporting for JoyNews, Kweku Asante, Parliament House, Accra.
So we've brought you details of how the E-Levy, was repealed, and brought you the history of how the levy got its way into Parliament and how it did over the period. But what exactly are the numbers that accrued to the E-Levy? Lead data analyst Isaac Kofi joins me in studio with more on this. Kofi, let's understand how long actually has it been since E-Levy was passed into law?
Well, I think there you have it on the smart wall. 2 years, 10 months, 125 days since E-Levy became law and a tax handle that we could collect money from. This wasn't only a controversial tax handle, but one of the most promising tax handles that the country got in 2022 during our economic turmoils. Now, that tax handle in 2022 was expected to bring in some 7 billion Ghana cedis around that time. Remember, it was because of the E-Levy that we had to scrap the road tolls and all of that. Yeah. And it was supposed to be the final piece in that economic jigsaw, but it didn't really work. But one thing that we need to stress is that E-Levy as a tax handle really helped Ghana to get its IMF program in that fast-track manner compared to, let's say, Zambia and others who were struggling around that time, because we had introduced a tax handle that was very, very promising. And so the IMF looked at this and they saw that we could close the revenue gap. Now, I want us to look at the expected revenue, what we are expecting between 2022 and 2024. The projected expected revenue in this year, cumulatively, is around 11.3 billion Ghana cedis. But Kojo, would you be shocked if I tell you that this was a projection anyway, but we were only able to get less than 40% of what we projected? That's about 3.4 or 3.5 billion Ghana cedis out of a target of 11.3 billion. So although this was a very promising tax, it didn't really live up to expected revenue projections. And many have said that it was because of the backlash that government faced, and people said that it was a regressive tax. Now, maybe those who will be happy are the over 23 million active mobile money accounts and the over 4,000 active Momo agents. When the president finally inks that bill, the new one, definitely we'll see the magnitude of what we have on the screens.
Interesting statistics there. I mean, you look at how much we expected, how much we actually got from this.
Very little.
But that is why government says, I'm going to take it off, because really we can make do with it. But we need to get into what impact this will have on our economy.
Kojo, because there would be a gap, and let's explore that gap and how government plans to fix that gap. Well, joining us now is the director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research of the University of Ghana. Thank you so much, Professor Peter Quartey, for your time here on JoyNews Prime. Now, as a Ghanaian, I am excited. E-Levy is gone, but there's a gap, a fiscal gap. How do government fill this gap?
Well, it's quite a difficult one, looking at the amount of money involved and looking at our tax GDP ratio. We are still below the threshold, but it's a tax that's really affecting individuals, affecting businesses, and therefore it has to either we reduce the rate significantly or we scrap it. And I think it is in order that government saw the need to scrap E-Levy. Now, how do we fill the gap? I don't think we have been very efficient in our tax collection measures. I take property rates, for instance. It's one cash cow that we should explore. So far, we've not done so well with property rates. If you look at property values in Accra alone, there is so much we can collect, but unfortunately, we haven't done so. There are other tax handles that we can do same, but we've not been living. Our VAT rates that are so high encourages people not to pay. It encourages tax avoidance, non-compliance, and so on and so forth. And I think if we scrap this levy, it will rather promote business, e-commerce, which we can tax. I would encourage government to also look at e-commerce, because E-Levy is really destroying e-commerce. And if we scrap E-Levy, it will that sector. A lot of businesses have moved online since COVID.
Governments have noticed that they plan to introduce tolls back to the system. Many argue that the E-Levy provided a better platform to broaden the tax net. What's your thoughts on that?
It did, but I thought if we had started with very low rates and gradually enhance it. Maybe would have done much better, but the rate was just too high. It was punitive. It rather discouraged the use of mobile money. It destroyed many businesses. So right from the onset, I think we got it wrong, and it's best to scrap it. If you want to reintroduce it, then you gauge the market, you undertake a market survey and be sure. But I don't think in this current form and the problems it's bringing, it is worth keeping E-Levy.
Thank you so much, Prof, for your time here on JoyNews Prime.
Quite interesting development there. But if you just joined us, the news is that E-Levy has been scrapped. Well, away from that, let's take you to the Ashanti region because a relief donation meant for victims of the devastating Adum fire in Kumasi has been rejected by affected traders, sparking controversy. Interior Minister and Asawase MP Muntaka Mubarak presented 1,500 bags of rice, 800 boxes of cooking oil and soap to support those who lost their businesses, but the traders turned it down. They argue that the items do not address their most pressing needs as they struggle to rebuild. Watch the traders as they chant rejecting the relief donation. Well, let's go on Zoom and speak to my colleague, Nana Boache Adum, who was at the scene for more on this. Nana, so you give us the background, really. What happened to get the traders to be in the mood we saw them in?
Well, Kojo, this evening, the Interior Minister, Muntaka Mubarak, came into Adum PZ where fire had engulfed several shops. You know, that incident, unfortunate incident, happened last week, Friday. He came in there to see for himself what had happened. Well, there were some of the issues that the Interior Minister raised. Three among them was the how to support the Ghana National Fire Service in quickly curbing such outbreaks on time, and also providing support to these affected traders. And also another major thing was to enhance security in our markets, not just in Ashanti region, but across the country. One of the major things that he also had to do was to make a donation from his ministry, that's the Interior Ministry. He donated 1,500 bags of rice to the affected traders, 800 boxes of oil, and 1,000 boxes of soap. Now, this was the donation that was made by the Interior Minister, Muntaka Mubarak. When he made this known to the media, he decided to come down where he had 3 trucks loaded with all of these items that I had mentioned earlier. So the NADMO officials who joined the Interior Minister were told to open the trucks, and when they opened the trucks, before they had even done that, the affected traders were all there waiting for the minister and the NADMO officials to open the truck. When they did open the first truck that contained the bags of rice, and the traders started to sound some form of rave. And then when they had opened another box which was full of oil, they started chanting Yempemo, Yempemo. They later opened the other truck which was full of the boxes of soap, and that started to some form of hooting, leading to the rejection of all of these items. And so this is the background story that led to all of this.
So they never took any of the items, or still their leaders took them?
So what we know is that they had called on the NADMO officials to move the trucks out of the arena. The arena that I'm making mention of is the place that the fire engulfed. The affected traders chanted and said that they do not want to see the trucks, else they are going to stone the trucks. And so the NADMO officials had to bring a motorcade to lead the 3 trucks that had these items out of the arena. And so while we were there, the motorcade had led the 3 trucks to move out of the arena. So as I speak to you, the trucks are not there. We do not know where the trucks are, but we are still going to follow up on that closely.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, I'm grateful for those updates. But I mean, as we speak, what's the situation in terms of the rebuilding? Because the traders wanted to rebuild. What do we know so far?
So, Kojo, this is exactly the question that you're asking. The traders have said that they do not want these kind of support. They don't want items. They don't want rice. They don't want oil. They don't want soap. What they need is the land. They want to build the shops themselves. Okay. They want to take up the construction of the area themselves. And so it is not for the minister to come and give them rice and boxes of oil. What they need is for them to come and tell them that this land is for you. Go back to make sales, and that is what they need at the moment, not the oil and bags of rice.
And I'm grateful for joining us here, and that's the situation in the Ashanti Regional Capital of Kumasi. Quite interesting there. Yeah.
Well, let's shift our attention to other stories, Kojo, and let's focus on the NPP. They have launched a scathing attack on the NDC government, accusing it of weaponizing state institutions, failing to deliver on key promises, and turning a blind eye to illegal mining. At a press conference in Accra, the party's communications director, Richard Ahiamba, criticized what he described as a deliberate attempt to discredit former NPP officials while failing to address Ghana's pressing economic and environmental challenges. My colleague Michael Ashali was there. He filed this report.
The New Patriotic Party has criticized government's public handling of corruption allegations against former officials of the SWAL NPP administration. Communications Director Dr. Richard Ahiamba, addressing a news conference, accused the Attorney General of engaging in persecution rather than prosecution.
And the clear strategy of the John Dramani Mahama administration to try individuals accused of potential acts of corruption in the media rather than in the courtrooms. This is not prosecution, it is persecution. Either the evidence they know cannot stand the test of scrutiny in the courtroom, or they simply are engaged in a political persecution to vilify individuals and create disaffection for the New Patriotic Party.
On the 2025 budget, Dr. Ahiamba dismissed it as misleading and out of touch with the realities of Ghanaians, adding that it fails to make provisions for the much-touted 24-hour economy.
The 2025 budget, you will agree with me that is indeed a scam in the making. Made no provisions for the implementation of the 24-hour economy. The government's priorities in the 2025 budget clashed with the expectations of Ghanaians.
He also launched a scathing attack on government's fight against illegal mining, alleging that NDC operatives are shielding illegal miners while the destruction of Ghana's forests continues unabated.
This government lacked the commitment to fight galamsey. At this rate, we risk losing all our forest cover to galamsey.
He also refuted claims that government had successfully reclaimed degraded forests, insisting that illegal mining remains rampant in several regions.
The Ofin Shelter Belt Forest Reserve is infested with galamseyers who recently attacked and injured Forestry Commission Rapid Response Team members. In the Brim North District, several forests have been overtaken, namely the Chenchemso and the Jari Forest in Equiansi. This was just days ago, about 2 days ago. A complete repeal of the law is necessary and is what we must demand to ensure a total ban on mining in our forests.
The NPP maintains that the NDC-led administration is failing Ghanaians across multiple fronts and have vowed to hold them accountable. For JoyNews, Michael Ashale.
Relatedly, the former Director General of the National Signals Bureau, Kwabena Edu-Boahenye, and his wife, Angela Boateng, have sued the Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayine, and the Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO, over a 200 million cedis bail for both of them. The couple are still in custody following unsuccessful attempts by their lawyers since their arrest on charges of embezzling $7 million in public funds. In a writ filed by their lawyer, Samuel Atachia, he argued that the bill demand for the two are not only excessive but also appear designed to circumvent constitutional detention limits. Let's go on the lines now on Zoom and speak to lead counsel Samuel Atachia himself. Grateful for joining us here. Now, what exactly are your client's demands from the court? Kindly unmute so we can follow you, sir.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Clearly.
Yes. There is a very subtle attempt by Yoko to exceed the 48-hour limit as mandated by the Constitution. Anybody arrested, if it's not released after 48 hours, they should go to court and seek a remand. So what it is that if your captors tell you that these are my terms for your bail, and you need to satisfy them before you go, that could be a permanent stay behind bars. So from our perspective, what they said we should do, we've done it. But nevertheless, they are keeping our clients. That is why we have to run to the forum of justice, where the pleasure of the captors, Yoko, is not what matters, but what is consistent with the Constitution, that every man who is arrested or even charged with an offense is deemed innocent until proven otherwise. An innocent man should not languish behind bars for long, because then that cancels the meaning of innocence. What you are required to see is that can you give us sufficient reason to go free for now, so that when we need you, come back. That is the essence of bail. A reasonable arrangement that the person will not abscond the jurisdiction, and that also he will not interfere with the investigation. And even now, we have been told that.
So are you asking the court to grant your client bail, or what exactly?
Yes, that is the purpose of it, because what is happening with Yoko, we are not comfortable with it. So the Forum for Justice is not Yoko. You know that by now. They have a pleasure. They have objectives to achieve. They have people to please and the rest of it. So where you go and you can find justice, a court of competent jurisdiction.
Okay.
A court of law, equity, and good conscience. That why should an innocent man stay behind bars for close to a week? Tomorrow will be a week, when he can post sufficient security that whenever you need him to help with the investigations of the matter, he will show up.
But does the law prescribe how much, or a formula for determining, the sort of bail terms they prescribe?
The law does not define that, but what the law says that it should be reasonable.
Okay.
To say the terms of the bill should be reasonable, but not onerous or burdensome, so that the effect of those terms which are onerous is that there's no bail at all. So if you are not able to meet their terms, I'm afraid then you are behind bars. That's why when you go to court, the court will look at the case and give what we call reasonable terms. You can get, excuse me to say, investigators who are very unreasonable.
Okay.
Why? With one aim, and they come to tell the general public that they've not met the bail condition. That's why they are still languishing there. But if what you've imposed on them is onerous, it lies ill in your mouth to say that they've not met the bail terms, because you don't want them to come out in the first place. That is why you impose those onerous terms on them. So we are in the forum of justice, and I believe, given the nature of the case, they should be admitted to bail.
Okay, but have you met the bail conditions of 200 million as put out by the AG?
It's long met. People are ready. The decency of the suspects, you will not run away from. They are not people who are common criminals. And well-meaning Ghanaians are ready to post security for bail. That is the point of the matter. So when people pass a vote of confidence in you that you will not abscond the jurisdiction, you always say that, you can even take our houses as security, that the people will appear before you. And guess what? Face the accusers. So this is the essence of the whole matter.
So if you say you've met the bill terms, have the authorities explained to you why they are still keeping your clients?
It's something that they will not share with you because they enjoy it. It is for them to have enough power play so that the rights of your client are violated. That is why we believe that let's take it to the Chamber of Equity, Law, and Good Conscience. And let's see whether a citizen of Ghana, should languish behind bars when it's not been proven guilty. Okay. Those who are supposed to be incarcerated by law are those who have been convicted.
Okay.
That is the essence of bail, is to tell everybody that the man is not guilty yet. And therefore, there's no basis for the person to languish behind bars.
Okay. So where is Mr. Buahini and his wife being kept, and under which conditions?
Mr. Buahini and the wife are at the moment in the cells of Yoko. You know, that edifice of Yoko has some cell arrangement there as well. So both of them are there.
Mm. And the sort of conditions they are in?
Well, I don't think it's cruel, but, you know, there is no cell in the world which is comfortable, because even the mental oppression alone is enough to defeat your spirit. If a man hasn't gotten the liberty to move out, to go to a place that he wants, a man cannot meet friends. A man cannot even have a tete-a-tete with a lawyer. No matter how you see the cells, it will not be a 5-star hotel.
Mm. Mm. So the Adum is not able to have a tete-a-tete with you?
That is so.
Mm. Okay. All right. I'm grateful to you for joining us here. That lawyer Samuel Atachade, he's lawyer for Adum and his wife who are being kept in the custody of Iyoko. This is still JoyNews Prime. We'll take a break here. We'll be back with more.
Thanks for staying with us here on JoyNews Prime. To other stories now, the Minister for Government Communications, Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, is objecting to the minority's accusation that President John Dramani Mahama's referral of petitions for the Chief Justice's removal is politically motivated. John Mahama last night referred 3 petitions calling for the removal of the Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo to the Council of State for advice. You'll recall that a similar petition under the former President Akufo-Addo was dismissed on the grounds that the petitioner, Professor Stephen Kweku Asare, provided no evidence to back his demands. Well, the minority in Parliament, they weighed in on the first petition and John Mahama's decision to forward it to the Council of State. They say it is politically motivated.
Yeah, to begin with, the Constitution itself anticipates that public office holders, including the President himself, can become the subject of demands for removal based on perceived or alleged wrongdoing. For that reason, the framers of the Constitution put in place rigorous mechanisms to regulate such a process. It is that process that is being followed. It is not the case that once a petition is slapped in, the President proceeds to remove anybody. In fact, the President does not have the power to do so. The Constitution says that it should go through a process involving a committee of persons who should have capacity to make such a determination, including 2 Supreme Court justices. So it is not an arbitrary process based or motivated by any thinking of the President. It is a process laid down by Ghanaian law.
On the controversy about the determination of a prima facie case on the matter, here's his position.
The Constitution was written by persons who were well-meaning. And to the extent that the constitutional provisions are followed, there should be no cause for concern in terms of transparency or the lack of it. All that is happening is that the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, which dictates how such a process should be carried forward, is being adhered to. The MPP is in no position to offer any lectures to government on this matter, given the very things that they did. If they thought that President Akufo-Addo had the power to do what he did, and indeed the Constitution said he had the power to do so, and he did so, and they were happy with it. They applauded him. They supported him. On what basis do they seek to impute any motive beyond wanting to follow the constitution to the letter in this particular process? So the views he is expressing, in my view, are to be dismissed. The president has received petitions. The president swore an oath before the people of Ghana to abide by the dictates of the constitution. So if he is required to take a step pursuant to constitutional provisions, he must be allowed to do so.
Away from that, an entomologist at the University of Energy and Natural Resources is raising public awareness about the consumption of African palm weevil larvae known as akokono in the Akan language. Dr. Jacob Perachuga Anankware, coordinator of the Health Insect Project, explains that although the insect is considered a pest, while damaging the growing points of palm trees and weakening them, farming it could offer a more sustainable approach to food security with minimal environmental impact. JoyNews' Mahmoud Mohammed Noordin visited Dr. Anankware's insect farm in Suyaing and father's report.
So these beans you are seeing all over here have either the larval or adult stages of the African palm larva, which is traditionally known as akokono in the Akan language. So we use very simple agricultural products and sometimes agricultural waste to produce these nutritious edible insects.
Dr. Jacob Anankware, an entomologist and lecturer at the University of Energy and Natural Resources, says the larvae grow between 21 and 28 days before harvesting.
Once these ones hatch and grow up to 21 to 28 days, they are often ready for the market. So harvesting a few of them. I don't want, some have started weaving cocoons, so I don't want to bother them so much.
They have a high rate of reproduction.
So 150 to 180 will be a kilogram depending on the sizes. Because you see, if these ones are much smaller than these ones. Okay, so these are actually ready for the market. This is about the 8th insta.
Currently, 1 kilogram of palm larva costs between 70 and 100 cedis.
We produce and we are not able to meet the quantities that people are purchasing. Because if I tell you the number of people who place orders and the class in society who place orders, you'll be shocked. That is why the prices have gone up.
The entomologist says Ghana must push for innovation to encourage the growth of insects in order to help the economy grow.
Get them on board, train and empower them to produce the black soldier fly, Hematia illucens larvae, which will augment or replace fish meal in the diets of poultry, fish, and pigs. And I'm sure with that, we'll be able to fully feed our people with the right amount of protein without necessarily importing protein.
A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
Climate Focus is brought to you by JoyNews in partnership with Youth Bridge Foundation, bridging gaps for positive youth development, and the Climate Development Knowledge Network.
Well, Salaga in the Savannah region was a key site in the transatlantic slave trade. Countless men and women and children were captured and sold. In the 17th century, it became a place of unimaginable pain, separation and loss. As part of our Ghana Man series, we revisit the market's painful legacy and its lasting impact on Ghana's identity. And Adum reports.
Oh, freedom. From the 16th century, Salaga was one of the leading market centers in West Africa. Salaga was founded in the 16th century Gonja Kingdom before being overrun by Ashanti forces in 1744. The British defeat of the Ashantis during the Third Anglo-Ashanti War in 1874 ended the Ashanti rule over Salaga. However, the British abolition of slavery in the Gold Coast in 1874 to 1875 did not end the Salaga slave market practices in the Gold Coast. Today, the remains of the Salaga slave market stands as a memory to those who suffered here. The slave trade may have ended, but its remnants are still felt. I met Ibrahim Jamal, the cultural officer at the Salaga slave market. He explains the history of the slave market.
Slaves here abroad from Upper East, Upper West, and then the surrounding villages.
led by the slave agents who were the Hausa and then the Zabarma people. One thing about the Salaga slave market is that the Europeans have never been here. It's only when they get to Cape Coast, then they are sold to the Europeans.
Ibrahim Jama explains the suffering of slaves through their slave masters.
For the slave agents, they don't care. Yes, they don't care what you are going through. The only one, at the end of the day, the strong ones. So when you are weak and then they realize you are dying, they unchain you, leave you in the bush, you die, animal feed will come and then feed on your flesh. Yes. And
oh, Brace, you have to take me to Savannah region.
We need to go there to the Salaga, but we'll be going there with Akokono. Yeah.
Well, that's how I wrap up the bulletin. I'm leaving you in the able hands of Brace and Becky. They'll bring in statements.